And when I started in the mid 90s, I had none of this background. I had not gone to school for computer science. I didn't actually I knew very little about computers, um, and I was actually in a rock band.
A rock band? Hey everyone, today, as you guessed, we're going to talk with Sam, who was in a rock band before getting into the world of tech. He has some great insights to share on the world of tech from like a managerial standpoint and how he looks at applicants and how he approaches problems. So let's get right into it. I know that you're involved in the tech scene, and I really wanted to understand your story of how you got to where you're at now from the days of I know you from kind of being in the art scene.
So I guess I'll start by saying what it is that I do now, maybe professionally in the tech world, and sort of how that how I started and wound up where I am. So I work at a digital agency called Blue State, which is a firm that evolved out of the Barack Obama campaigns in 2008 and 2012. So the people that founded Blue State ran all of the digital aspects of the campaigns for Barack Obama and really invented the small dollar fundraising, grassroots fundraising movement. So, it's pretty common now, but it was a big innovation at that time. And most of the work that we do now is providing digital marketing for big nonprofits. So I work with nonprofits like Doctors Without Borders and UNICEF and Amnesty International and the like, and help them with their fundraising and getting the word out about what they do.
Definitely. And if you don't mind getting into that a little more, what are some of the techniques or kind of the steps that you go along to when you're meeting with a client or meeting with someone you need to build a website for, what are the steps that you go on to kind of solidify in your own mind how to address the process with your team?
People come to you with a pretty good idea of what it is that they want. Maybe the wrong idea, but they'll have an idea. And usually, in our field, we have this thing called the RFP, or the request for proposals, which is where the potential client has written up their vision for how they want the work to happen and what they think the things should do and be, and then you write a proposal which tells how you would satisfy those requests, right? So based on what you've asked, this is how we would go about doing it, and how much it would cost and how long it would take and that kind of thing. And I do a lot of that kind of work now. So after actually building websites or running website projects for many years, I just don't really want to do that anymore. I'd rather just envision how it might happen and then have someone else build it if I can sell the project. So I do a lot of that work now. And the way that I typically break it down, there's two different approaches you can take. One is kind of like the itemized shopping list approach. Like they want this feature and this feature and this feature and this feature. It's a list of features, right? And you can sort of think about what each feature might take to create, and then that rolls up into a price and a amount of time and so forth. And this sort of, it's the way the work would actually end up getting done. Like you would write all these tickets in your Jira or whatever software management program you're using. They'll all have a feature, and you'll have an estimate for each feature and the user story and the acceptance criteria. That's how the work gets done. But you can't always price it that way up front with accuracy, or estimate with accuracy up front. You need to do some research first. And so the other way that you can approach getting your hands around the project and writing a proposal around it is just envisioning the amount of time these kinds of projects typically take.
I'm interested, what got you into this managing projects and did you do before then? And how did the transition between what you were doing before to managing projects, how did that flow?
I was in this band, and I also was a cook. And so the two things that made me very prepared to be a project manager were having a good sense of things having to come together in a kitchen, right? So if you're a line cook or if you're working in a restaurant in any, in any part of the chain, you know that, oh, for a plate to arrive, hot on someone's table, there's all these things that had to happen ahead of time. Like people the day before had to be chopping vegetables in the back kitchen, or someone had to make a soup the day before or the morning of, and like the salad line had to be prepped, and like all of the things that the line cook needs had to be like set out, ahead of that shift. And then when the actual like shift is happening and you're working the line, which is the hot stove, then every order that goes up on the wheel has its own little punch list of instructions. Like you have to make these dishes, and each dish has a certain number of things on the plate, and they all take a certain amount of time to create, but you have to make them all finish at the same time. And so that's the same thing as software. Like it all has to finish at the same time. And so you have to have a really good sense of like, well, what is the chain of things that have to happen for this thing to finish on this date? And so that, just the mindset of working in a kitchen made me very prepared to think about software that way. And then the other part was being in this band where I was in a band with 8 people, including myself. And in order for us to get anything done, because everyone had very like strong personalities and totally different agendas, you had to sort of understand psychologically what made people tick, and like, don't do this because that'll piss this person off and he'll leave practice, or like spend some time, outside of practice with this person telling them about how great they are and so forth. And they'll like, feel good about you and like want to work with you. So all of these like sort of like psychological aspects of understanding people and like understanding how to get them to cooperate together was really like incubated in that setting. And so those two things together, like, is kind of what a project manager does. They break down a schedule and all of the tasks that have to happen, and for something to come together at the end. And then they also have to build relationships with everyone on their team and their client to understand what makes them all tick and be able to get them to all collaborate effectively.
It sounds like you were managing teams and projects before that was even a thing in the tech world.
Well, I mean, there were certainly, I mean, tech has been happening, for hundreds of years, actually. I mean, people that were, building, industrial machines also had to do these kinds of processes. And so there's always been managers, managing processes to make things come together, and farmers have to do this as well. And, so it's not like this is a unique thing to software, but I just stumbled into software, but already with having practiced some of the tools. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that software isn't some sort of like mysterious black box that only certain people have like the insight to participate in. Like there's different ways that you can get involved, and different skill sets that are necessary that not everyone has.
What would some advice be to someone who's looking to get into software and they don't know if necessarily it's the right path for them?
You should take a look at the things that you use in your personal life that or that you find attractive, or you find particularly useful, and they think about what that technology consists of, and like what try and break it down. Like I have this thing that I use every day. Like maybe you're addicted to Instagram, right? And like you're on Instagram all the time, but rather than just sort of like be a non-critical user of it, like sort of think about what it is. Like what is this thing made of? Like when you're swiping around and clicking on stuff, like what does that actually consist of? And there's a experience design aspect, like the way it feels to you as a user. Like someone has to think about that creatively, and there's people whose job it is to design the experience of the product. There's the sort of software aspect of it that lives on your phone, and someone specializes on that piece. There's a software aspect that lives on the cloud, the home base of the software, and there's people that focus on that piece. There's there's the piping that connects your device to the cloud where the server is, and there's people that work on the telecommunications piping. Like sort of think about what these things are, and like the chain of dependencies that go into making this thing, which seems sort of simple and small. But if you start to really like analyze it, it's big, and there's a lot of places that that you might be able to, if you start to get critical about it, see yourself playing a role, like as an intellectually engaged role. And I think that's a good practice, rather just as a like a personal habit to develop, because if we otherwise we just sort of like blindly move through an environment that's created by other people, and that's sort of a manipulative and sort of controlled posture to be in. And so like thinking critically about all of the tools that you use and their emotional impact on you is a good habit to have.
Well, when you're in that role, is there something specific you look for in people that you want to be a part of your team?
When we want to make a hire, like we have to, someone's left and we have to replace them, or we're going to grow and add someone new. We'll put up a job listing, right? And so then we'll get hundreds of resumes in, and some of these resumes will be for people who do work that's just not even in the ballpark of what we do, right? So it'll be like, I'm a project manager from the construction industry, but I should be able to do software too. And so there's that layer, and then there's going to be people who have been working in software, but in software that's totally unlike the software you do. Like maybe they worked at a big bank at like the software that the banking industry needs to make, and their work experience is totally no overlap with the type of work that we do. And so you have to figure out how to throw those people out quickly, because you have to deal with dozens or maybe 100 or 200 applications that might come in every day. And so you have to sort of quickly be like, nope, nope, nope. After you throw out the nopes, which you recognize within a couple of seconds, sometimes just based on the template that someone will use for their resume, that the banking people almost always use the same template. They all look the same. So it'd be like, oh, that's the banking people template. And then you look at it like, yep, that's right. And then you don't, toss that one. So, through that process, we get down to maybe 10% of the resumes, are ones to actually take a slightly longer look at. And by slightly longer, I mean like literally 20 seconds. Like you're sort of scanning down, oh, this might be someone, let's see, and like you pretty quickly get a sense of what the skills are, what the interests and approach that someone has, just by how they do the resume. And that for me is a feel rather than the information itself a lot of the times. And so so I like to see, like, does this person, did they make a resume that's just using a template that they got, and or are they trying to actually stand out a little bit, and do they have a good sense of how to make themselves stand out, like sort of the communication skill sense, visual presentation sense, like did they really pack the page so full of content that it's really hard for me to read, like that. So if they did, then that gives me a sense that that's how they'll work all the time. It'll be too dense and cramped, and the colleagues will have to like do too much work to figure out what they're trying to say, and that kind of thing. So there's a lot that comes through impressionistically really quickly. I like to see someone who doesn't sort of jump from job to job. Like so if it says I did this for 3 months last year, and then I did this for a month, and I did this for 2 months, and it's like, well, why didn't you stick anywhere? Like, did people not want to work with you longer? Like, what's it's is there a hidden story there? Or do you have wanderlust, and like you just like can't pay attention to anything for a long time? So I like to see people who have like longer relationships, which makes me feel like they added value where they were. And then you start to get into, well, okay, now that I have a feel for this person, did the work that they do actually line up with what we do? And like start to look more closely at the specific types of work that is in their resume. But before you even get into that, there's all these other layers that you're just reacting to the feel, and it's really important to understand that, because you really only have a few seconds to make that impression.
Sam is such a pleasure to talk to. I actually went down, re-watched the recording, and took notes after the whole interview was done. I got such great information out of that. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below, and we'll see you all next time.